In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how your brain uses phase to pinpoint sounds in space. So I'm going to use Audacity for this little demonstration. Make sure that you put your headphones on. This won't work nearly as well if you have stereo speakers. So I'm going to create a new file here, and I'm just going to start talking in here. So I'm just using the mono mic on my laptop. And one cool thing about sound is it moves roughly 1 foot a millisecond. And your ears are also spaced roughly a foot apart, maybe 8 inches, depending on the size of your head. And your brain uses that difference to pinpoint sound placement in space. So for example, if a sound comes in from a point on your left-hand side, the sound reaches your left ear before it reaches your right ear, roughly a millisecond before. And for sound waves that are of mid-range frequencies, it does a really good job of being able to tell which sound is getting to it first, depending on the phase. So I'm going to stop this here and go back to the beginning, and this is just a mono signal, so I'm going to hit play and just listen to it. Should be coming right up the middle. And one cool thing about sound is it moves roughly 1 foot a millisecond, so that's definitely a key thing to remember. This also works if you're miking drum sets, or you're using 2 mics on a guitar amp where you have one mic shoved right down the speaker cone and another mic out in the room 8 feet away. You can actually realign the phase by shifting the one that is 8 feet away 8 milliseconds up in time, and it should align the phase. But what I'm going to do is create a duplicate signal here, and I just did a Command D on Mac. I think it's Control D is the shortcut on a PC. And what I'm going to do is pan the top one, the original one, over to the left, and I'm going to pan the other one over to the right. And I notice that I'm not going to touch the volume sliders at all. These are 2 identical signals, and it should still sound like it's coming right up the middle. One cool thing about sound is it moves roughly 1 foot a millisecond. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is, instead of using my volume sliders to change where this is in space, I'm going to make it arguably more realistic by zooming in on the waveform and then moving the bottom signal, the one in the right ear, backwards in time, a millisecond. So you can see there's a time bar up at the top here in Audacity, and these are seconds. So this is 2.087 seconds, 2.089. I'm going to zoom in one more time. So these are tens, hundredths, and thousandths of a second. So a millisecond is actually a thousandth of a second. And what I need to do is basically take this. One cool thing about whoops, here, you can do the sound. Stop. is let's find a place on the waveform where it's a little bigger. Oh yeah, let's go over here. We'll zoom in on this. Sorry. So zoom out here. So here's 3.508, 3.509. So I need to take this signal on the bottom using my little shifter tool, and I'm just going to slide it over 1 millisecond there. And then let's zoom back out and go back to the beginning of that little clip, and magically it should sound like it's coming out of the left ear. One cool thing about sound is it moves roughly 1 foot a millisecond. So yeah, there's magic right there. And again, I didn't touch the volume sliders. That was just phase placement. So your brain is just doing a whole bunch of math like a computer and pinpointing the sound. And there's no reverb on there. It actually has the same room reverb on those 2 tracks. So you can actually enhance this effect even more by putting 2 independent reverbs on these 2 signals. So let's do that really quick. I'm going to process this first one using the reverb effect. And let's see, I'm going to put my pre-delay way down because the room reflections, I'm in a pretty small room. I don't know, say that the first reflections are getting to you 10 milliseconds later. And this year, also I'm just turning the stereo width down so it's not processing this reverb in stereo. I'm not going to touch any of the other default things, so we're going to process that one. And then what I'm going to do is process the right ear with a similar reverb. But I'm actually going to move the pre-delay 2 milliseconds later because let's say the sound source takes a little bit longer to get to it. Pre-delay, let's put it over here at 11 milliseconds. And then I'm actually going to expand the room size. Let's say that your left ear is hearing the reflections that are bouncing off the left-hand side of the room, and this one's hearing the reflections bouncing off of the other side. So we'll process that one, and I'm going to hit play here, and let's see if that enhances the effect. Actually, I think I put that on the wrong one, did I? Let's process it again. 2711. Okay, so this is definitely on the right ear. Let's try that. Now we'll listen to my little spiel. One cool thing about sound is it moves roughly 1 foot a millisecond. And your ears are also spaced roughly a foot apart, maybe 8 inches, depending on the size. Okay, so that you can have all sorts of fun with. But again, this is a really powerful tool, and it definitely works on mid-range sound sources much better. Bass frequencies your ear has a lot of trouble hearing, and then really high frequencies it has a lot of trouble hearing as well. And you can actually use Audacity to test that. At least the high frequencies work better on a laptop. You can go to the generate function and create a tone, something really high pitched. I don't know, 8,000. You should be able to hear that unless you're going totally deaf. And then create a sine wave. And I'm not going to play this because it'll blow your ears out, but follow along, and I would create a sine wave and then unplug your headphones and then go stand maybe 10 feet away from your laptop and hit play, and then turn your head in space and see how good of a job it does pinpointing the sound. You'll find that the sound source sounds like it's moving around the room. Problem is your brain is having trouble pinpointing the phase, and it's hearing a lot of reflections too, and it tends to confuse it. Okay, that's it.